and start that. Welcome, welcome, welcome to class. Take it away, Gary.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. My name's Gary, and very nice to meeting two of you.
I know, right? But these are, hey, guess what? These are the students that are in it to win it. We did lose one that I think she had connection issues, but they'll still come in. Yeah.
This is excellent. Thank you for having me. So I'm here today to introduce some of the services that we have at the Student Health. And my name is Gary, Gary Zinn. I'm a psychologist in training, supervised by Dr. Campitelli Smith. As you can see also, she just joined us. I want to introduce myself today and also some of the services that we have available to you that you could access actually for free or for a minimal fee. And thank you so much, Professor Lenny, for having me. And thank you all for your attention. I will keep my presentation short. Please feel free to ask questions after my this very quick presentation. Currently, we have psychological services through telehealth available. You could access the medical, also psychological services. You could see the nurse, you could see medical doctor, you could also see us psychologists or psychologists in training for free or with a very low cost for additional medical services. These could be antibiotics, lab tests, flu shots, things like that. You are, if you are thinking about COVID testing, Student Health is not involved with COVID testing at this time. So please visit our webpage for further information.
Right. It's the Orange County Healthcare Agency, but I'm on campus 2 days a week now. And so I could see their little mobile testing site up near the gym, which is great.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I don't because I
yeah,
haven't
I know it's funky when you're not on campus, and that was like a little switcherooning for me, but I kind of needed that, you know. Right. But it was nice to see what was also still going on over there. Bookstores working and whatnot. Yeah, it's great. Yeah,
fantastic. So we have a few flyers that we had the kind of asked all professors to help us post. I don't know, Professor Lenny, do we have them posted on the Canva? Oh,
I'll bring them up I'll bring them up right now if you'd like.
Oh, that would be fantastic. Thank you.
Of course. Let me.
So the first flyer would be our student health psychological, the big 2-pager. That one, if you have it. Thank you.
I'll get it. Yeah, I'll get it. Hold on. I'm like so organized, like I can't actually find where I filed it.
You are brilliant. Thank you very much.
No, like I'm getting really like compulsive about my filing, and then I'm so smart that I, put it somewhere so clever. And then,
awesome. my printer is black and white, and for some reason when I was printing them, it wouldn't come out, the lining and then the printout, it just didn't line up. So I apologize, but thank you very much for helping me sharing them.
Now where did I put it? Okay, there. Oh, wait. Because I'm recording, it won't let me like.
Oh, it's okay. I have a link for.
I have it. It's just not letting me. There we go. Okay.
Oh.
Because it won't let me minimize the screen while I'm recording, but I can.
I'll put it in the chat.
Yes.
Put it in the chat.
Now I found it. I like made it. What's the difference between not minimizing all the way down and just reducing? So once I reduce it, yeah, I got it. I put everything in the OneDrive there with you. Okay. And I have inks up here too. You have.
Okay, I've got it.
Okay, good. Thank you.
So on the first page, as this page, as the flyer is coming up, you will see that we have free services, including counseling, and some of the issues that we address are anxiety issues.
I'm going to pull it up and then share the screen so we can actually see it.
Yeah, thank you.
Beautiful. Hold on. Give it a sec. Okay, now there we go. Yay.
All hands on deck,
I know,
everybody.
right? Yeah. And I'm not going to blame the lack of coffee because I've already had it. So let's share the screen. I can't do that. Can't do that. Can't do that. It's here. There we go. Wait, hold on. Do you guys see? Okay, there we go. I'm just going to share the screen. It's kind of going a little slow. And here we are. Yay. Can you see it now? Big yellow one.
Looks amazing.
Yay. It's
Yeah, I can see it. Yes.
nice and
So
clean. I like it. It's nice.
Oh yeah, it looks great. Thank you.
I'm gonna try to.
So we are, like I said, share earlier with you guys, we are offering virtual counseling and we're helping a lot of students manage challenges around COVID anxiety, some of the concerns with dealing with adjustment in schools. Maybe you have partner intimacy, relationship issues. We have a lot of students that come to us with just dealing with stress in the college. It could be also veterans adjusting to civilian life. Of course, sometimes drug and alcohol abuse, depression and anxiety, like I shared earlier, maybe even economic stress, LGBTQ concerns, acculturations. So as you can see, we help address a lot of different issues, wide range of issues. So we are here for you. If you are looking for somebody just to have some support, we are here ready to help. So you do need to make an appointment to see us for therapy and for counseling services. And you will need to complete paperwork, patient forms, just like regular doctor's visit. So they are procedures that you do need to make sure that you complete. And on this page, you will see that we have the phone number, and that's how you make an appointment with us. The phone number, and then also I believe, yes, the address, the website address is also there. So you could check us out and call us and make an appointment. On the second page, Professor Lenny, if you could scroll down to the second page.
And this is where I'm going to put my 2 cents in, if you don't mind.
Yes, please.
I can't not. So as a college student myself, I actually utilize the services because, I mean, I think my student fees were like $12 or something back in the day. But I went to a number of different schools and I was like, hey, let's see what's going on here. And they helped me through a couple of things. And, it was nice to have somebody who wasn't in my family, wasn't in my bubble, wasn't even a friend, was somebody who could just objectively see what was going on and I could just talk to somebody out and get it out or whatever. It then prompted me to get some more formalized therapy, which was nice. That actually helped a lot too. But in the meantime, it was like somebody who was like in my corner. So I was a big fan of that, especially even the regular health stuff was really nice too. So, and then always, as in my current iteration as a professor, I'm just a big fan of people reaching out and getting the help we need. Right now, it's such a unique time. I don't know of anybody who doesn't need help. Right. And so I know that there's always been a little bit of a stigma about, getting therapy or psychological help or whatever. I mean, we are all under the psychological microscope right now. There's a lot of pressure on all of us in so many different ways. Why would any of us think that we can go through this alone? I mean, this is such a unique experience that there's this distancing and loneliness, even when we're in our own bubble. But at the same time, you have somebody right here who can help you. So big fan of what you guys do. So thank you so much. I appreciate it deeply on many levels. And I'm always going to be a big supporter of what's going on over there. So as for my students, I always say, if you're not sure, talk with me. I'll help link you here. Sometimes people just say, what's the phone number? They just want a little bit extra help. I'm like, I know they can look it up, but I'll help you. I'll help you get there. Right. So just reach out.
Yeah, we're hearing a lot from students saying that, hey, we would like some mental health support, some assistance, some guidance, or just have some year that they could confide in. And so we're here for students, and it's up to them to, like you said, if they come to you and reach out to you. And thank you so much for being such a champion for us. And it is like you said, during this time, it's so tough, the isolation and the anxiety and then this entire thing of dealing everything on your own almost, right? You are
from little kids all the way to your grandparents.
Yeah.
We are all affected by this.
Yeah, and we are boxed in with our family or partners, and we love them. At the same time, there's a lot of we kind of need our own space, and we want to. So there's a lot. There's so many different issues that we want to help you guys, help students navigate. And again, we are here for you. We are here to support. We are here to listen, and we are here to provide that healing process. So hopefully when we are back to normal, right, you are more or less ready to tackle. I'm pretty sure like there are going to be new things, right, we had to again tackle.
And I absolutely love that you yourselves as a support system for our students also know that you have limitations and you have these external links too, which is brilliant. I actually, so the very top one, the OC links, that's where I used to work actually. So I was on the CAT team, so crisis assessment team, but also worked at North County Mental Health Outpatient Santa Ana, so the closest one. So I can speak to that. That's a really great resource, especially when people don't have insurance, which most of our students don't. And they do also work on a sliding scale. I don't know what that looks like now, but yeah, that's the place that they can, sometimes people are like, well, I don't want to talk to people on campus because what if it goes on my record? It does not go on your record, right? This is a support service. This is not a report card, right? No. So these two things are separate, but sometimes people still want a distance. And so these things like the warm line and the OC links and the crisis text line, very, very good resources. I can speak to those.
Yeah, thank you very much. Exactly. And thank you for highlighting the OC links. I want to also kind of put the spotlight on a couple of them. The DD Hirsch crisis phone line, that one is great. If you have some crisis situation, again, we do recommend you call 911 if it's for immediate support, or if you have serious thoughts about hurting yourself or others, please call 911. Alternatively, there's a DD Hirsch crisis line that is also for crisis, but maybe not as something that needs attention right away. And the last one, crisis text line, as Professor Lenny has shared, that is for people who may not have a lot of privacy. Maybe you cannot call right at this minute, but you do need help. Yeah. This is for like people can text, right? So there's a little bit more privacy. So no voice, just text. And it's 24/7. And it is very useful for people who maybe we're all kind of boxed in right now. So
it's nice because I personally, I remember when I was younger, I did have some issues with anxiety and loneliness and stuff like that, when you can like be around people and still feel different. Yeah. And so but back in the day, I didn't have a phone, but I would have loved to be able to be in that room and asking for help, but nobody knew. Like that would have been very helpful. And so I'm hoping that is helpful to students right now.
Thank you, guys. And so, these links, they are all useful. I just want to highlight a couple of them, just like Professor Lenny highlighted the OC links. So local services, resources are available to you guys. So in addition to on-campus help, some of you may be asking, am I eligible? And just as Professor Lenny has shared with you guys, if you have paid the student health fee, and right now you are in this class, so you are actively enrolled in a accredited class. And if you're 18 years old, then you are eligible to access free or low-cost health and wellness care with us. So if you are thinking about it, or if you want to make an appointment, please just call us at the 714 number, and it is on the flyer. It's also on our website.
Okay.
And again, if you are experiencing any medical emergencies, please do
Always.
keep 911 in mind, right? So that is something still, that will be your, again, the number that you want to reach out to if there's like immediate emergency. And also, as Professor Lenny just shared with you guys about confidentiality, I want to elaborate a little bit more. Your visits to psychological services are completely confidential. Nothing goes on your academic record, nothing. We will not speak to your professors, your partners, your families about your visit with us. Completely confidential. Do note though, please know that there are limitations to your confidentiality with us. As legally, we are mandated reporters. The limitations are, for example, if you have suicidal or homicidal risks to safety, meaning harming yourself or harming others, or if you disclose or report child abuse, elderly abuse, or dependent adult abuse. If you disclose or report any of these incidents or situations, then we will breach confidentiality and report them. So that's the limitation to confidentiality.
Yes.
Then I do want to very quickly share with you guys, we have a couple of events or
I'm going to open the angst flyer first.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Capitelli. I'm looking forward to this one because I'm going to share this one actually with my teenager because angst is like the bumper sticker of teenagerness.
Oh yeah,
but all of it too.
Yeah, with the social media, and then on top of it, COVID and just everyday life stress, and being a teenager, there's so much to manage.
A teenager on the inside is what I say.
Yeah, a teenager on the inside. Yes. So actually, this is a documentary viewing that we have scheduled for next week. Actually, it's coming up next Tuesday at 11:30. On the flyer, I do not know if this is the flyer that we share.
It's not the one with the link, but I can share the one with the link.
Yeah, that'll be beautiful. So the
link, this one has the website that was created by the college. So
I see. Yeah, it says sccollege.edu/angst.
Right. So that gives all in-depth information and the registration button. So if you don't find it, don't worry about it. You could just go to that website and you could register, get reminders of when it's coming and more information that way.
I'm just putting that in the chat.
Great.
Yeah. I'm excited about this one.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
It's like a great like timely word. And I think honestly, people are, in my personal opinion, I think a lot of people are more comfortable with saying that they're angry or angsty than saying that they have anxiety. I think more people are comfortable with saying I'm mad or I'm angry or I'm uncomfortable, I feel terrible, versus saying, oh, I'm feeling anxious. I think there's a timidness or a sensitivity or maybe a perceived weakness that comes with anxiety. And then we put the bravado on top of it. We put the anger on top of it to hide that. So I like how this is kind of connecting those things together, because that's the truth right there.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's that taboo, that stigma, and you don't want to come up, oh, I'm so easily,
Right.
I'm so anxiety, written, and there's a lot like you say, bravado. We want to present ourselves in a certain way. At the same time, there's a lot of anxiety going around. So you are not alone.
Right. Yeah.
And this documentary will help, address some of that worries and stress about covering or talking about anxiety. And we just want to raise awareness around anxiety.
And I am giving extra credit for this.
Yay!
Yay!
Extra credit for all my classes. Love this one.
That is brilliant, right?
So, why not?
Yeah. And so this film includes interviews with kids, like Professor Lenny saying, not just adults, kids, adolescents, and yes, adults too, and experts and parents. And it features so many young people that are struggling with anxiety, and even highlights the struggles that world champion swimmer Michael Phelps has with anxiety. So it hits everybody, okay? Again, you are not alone. Everybody is going through a lot, and anxiety definitely is part of that. So we want to share this very, very meaningful and helpful documentary with everybody. And after we screen this movie, we have a post-film panel and discussion following the film screening. So please feel free to stay and then engage with us on your experiences or ask questions. And also we'll be recording the film screening and
cool. Good.
the event. Of course, we would like everybody to be there, but we also recognize maybe some classes or other scheduling conflicts, so maybe not everybody could come. We do want to encourage you to register and then attend if you can. If you do have that opening, please bring your friend, bring your family, bring your partner. Yes, and join us at this event. And one last thing, we do have another, not event, but a self-paced module that would also address some of the difficult conversation that we may have to bring up or help each other. And you could access this.
I got it.
In the Cognito page. And this is a last flyer that we have.
So I just put it in the chat. I'm going to open it right now.
Oh, that's great. That's still helpful. Thank you very much. So the Cognito self-paced module is a helpful way, a helpful training, self-training to help you learn about how to talk about at-risk, talk to at-risk friends who are kind of going through some difficult distress in life, and help connect them with support. As you know, college, and right now, especially during COVID, could be very stressful. And this self-paced module will help you build confidence to talk with a friend or someone that you could see that need some support, some help. And so this is available to all students. Please check it out and sign up. And again, it's free and it's self-paced module. So you could do this in your own when you are done with your homework assignments. And
I do extra credit for this one too.
Oh, thank you so much.
Of course. I actually have like a note on mine because there is an instructor one. And for us, you guys give us like for the students, veterans, and like the queer community, which is awesome because they have different kind of needs. But I think all professors should do it. But why not? Why not have everybody get more information than less? Right.
Yeah.
You are exceptional. Thank you very much.
Well, I'm in human development. I mean, this is what we do. This is what we do.
Yeah, we appreciate you so much. The last thing I want to bring up is we do have a student survey link, and I will provide that link in the chat.
Oh, it's right there. I've got
it's right there.
So it's a MH survey. It's the student survey. It's an attachment, but it's also the web link. That's
thank you.
Survey.
Yeah, right in the middle. And I did open it, Gary, because I was gonna fill it out, but it is definitely for students. It's only 2 questions, so good job on that.
Yeah, very short. It's not a lengthy survey. We are not asking you to dedicate hours of time, but we do want to know and find out how you're doing, and we would like you to invite some of your your feedback with us. So
excellent.
And so that concludes my presentation. Anybody has any questions about our services or anything that I brought up today?
Since we only have a few people, I'm not going to require questions, but if Viviana or Daniela has one, you're welcome to put it in chat or say it out loud. And even if sometimes people are too shy, sometimes you can ask me and I can connect you with Gary later. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any questions?
Okay. Thank you guys for having me. I really had this is such a great honor to be here and then present our services and just introduce myself. And yeah, anything, Professor Lenny, thank you so much for having us.
Well, welcome to our campus, even though I don't think you're on campus. One of these days, maybe. Welcome to school.
Yeah, thank you. Okay,
Okay,
bye,
well,
everybody.
take care. Thank you so much, Gary.
Take
Thank you,
care.
Dr.
Thank
Kempthorne.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Anytime. Yeah. I mean, honestly, what work? I mean, that's like the job right now. It's like I try to get my son like an appointment with his therapist at Kaiser, and they're like, he's booked up for 3 months. I was like, oh my God. Like there's the work that needs to be done. It's right there. It's wild. There's a lot of stuff. So what do you guys think? Now that they're gone, we can talk about them. No kidding.
That was a very awesome presentation.
Yeah.
I really think that those are services that are needed the most right now.
Totally. But listen, at the very least, they have condoms and birth control too. I mean, I was like on it in college. I was like, yes, 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 yes. Yes, 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 yes. So, I mean, at the very least, they have a lot of services there. So I tell people, whatever you need, they'll help you. And if they can't, they'll tell you where they can help. They can get you the help.
Mhm.
Yeah, which is
That's
really
awesome.
cool. Okay, cool. All right. So good with that. Again, if anything comes up anytime over the semester, I'll send out an announcement to everybody, even though people weren't here. I'll send it out and offer that extra credit. And yeah, Cognito's great. The training is great. I'm actually going through the mandated reporter training again, self-paced modules. I mean, it's like the education's ongoing. You know, we can always use more help than less. And so if anything ever pops up, you have more questions at any time, just reach out. I'll see what I can do for you. Yeah, good. All right, so let's switch gears and let me clean up my desktop, which I've got stuff everywhere now. Let's have the chat and whatnot. Let me see if I can pull up my toolbar again. How do I do that? It's like escape. Hold on. There we go. And I'm going to stop the share and just pull up the PowerPoint. And again, for our class, the first half of this chapter is already up, which is great. So we are going to start, we're going to do about, the last 20, 30, 50, like 15 slides, which is gorgeous because the first half talked about genetics and epigenetics. And so again, a lot of this stuff is a little bit of a review from like 10th grade biology class and whatnot. But make sure you watch that video because I really talk about the actual like DNA, RNA, what genetics do, how we get our genes. In next chapter, in chapter 4, I actually have a video that shows how the chromosomes split and you get half of your genes from your mom and half of your genes from your dad, and then they fuse together. Like unbelievable. It still blows my mind even talking about it to this day. So this is the foundation. The genetics is the foundation for, hey, next chapter is like, now we're making a baby, right? But this part 2 is mostly about like literally how the cells develop. And then we'll talk about making a baby next chapter, which is really super fun. Okay, any questions so far? You guys have at least like a basis of knowledge for genetics and DNA and things like that? Ish. Yeah. I mean, come on. I think most everybody's been exposed to some of this stuff, whether or not we remember it, you know. Sometimes we remember, oh, I remember all that stuff. And then sometimes like, oh, I kind of remember that. So we're going to start with the actual making of the baby, like what the cells look like, right? And then next chapter we'll go with like actually making a baby, which is super fun. Love making babies. So we're going to talk about the actual stages of the genetic process. And as a baby is being born, there's different periods of the gestation, right? So the very first thing when an egg gets fertilized, we're jumping over that into that right now, except for next week, we're going to talk a little bit more about that. So once an egg gets fertilized, the cell division occurs. And I even have videos that tell you which cells are doing which things. Even when there's only 100 cells to talk about, they're already dividing the job. They're like, okay, you guys are going to go over there and do this, and you guys are going to go over there and do this. It's mind blowing. I have microscopic like videos. It's just mind blowing. So again, once there's an egg and a sperm is fertilized, it goes from 1 fertilized egg to 2 cells to 4 to 8, 16, 32, 64, 128. It every cell splits in half, right? So we're not talking about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? We're talking if there's 2, now there's 4, then there's 6, then there's 8, right? They're splitting in half. Each cell is doubling. So again, at this point, this is, and just to put it into perspective, everybody take out your pen or pencil and draw like a little dot on a paper, like the period at the end of a sentence. Just like if you're writing your name and they're writing a period at the end of a sentence. That's the size of a human egg. So you can actually see a human egg. Like if I had it like at the tip of my finger, I could actually kind of see it. It's really small, but you could kind of see it. Versus the sperm, right, which are super, super tiny. You could actually see a human egg. It's wild, right? It's a little bit mind blowing. It's like, so I tell people every time you see a period in a book, or even here, like on like way just right here, that's what a human egg size is, right? So all these things are happening inside of there. It's just wild. To me, I'm still in awe of how humans are created. So I am an adoptive mother. I went through infertility for like years and years and years, and we'll talk about that next chapter. But I'm still like, I'm not like mad that the process didn't happen with me. I'm just like still in awe that the process happens at all. Like there's so many things that can come in the way of having a healthy baby that it's a miracle when babies are born. And even next chapter, we'll talk about the statistics about this process right here can be going without a hitch, could be going, then all of a sudden it stops for whatever reason. Maybe the cells didn't divide properly. Maybe the hormones didn't in outside of the egg is not supported in the body. Like there's 1,000, honestly, like millions of things that can go wrong. Yet things go right all the time, which is amazing. And again, we'll learn next chapter that about for every baby born, there's about 6 that aren't. For whatever reason. And a lot of times women can be pregnant and not even know. And it doesn't progress, and it just comes out with the monthly cycle. So there's this really interesting thing where nature takes care of business. So I'm just always in awe of how nature actually works. It's just mind blowing to me. So again, this is how all life begins. It's so crazy. And the slide prior to it, I think maybe could be the one after it. I think sometimes they put things out of order, but it talks about a little bit about duplication and division within hours of conception. And by the way, after intercourse, it could be up to 3 days after intercourse where fertilization occurs. So every once in a while, when you hear somebody go, "Oh my gosh, I totally know I'm pregnant from last night," you're like, possible, but maybe not. All right. And then again, we have this contribution from the father, contribution from the mother, and these 23 half chromosomes could make 23 full chromosome, the pairs of chromosomes, right? And it's your blueprints of who you are. That's what the DNA is, their actual instructions. And I actually have this video of how they actually divide and refuse to make a new person. It's just mind blowing to me. And it's all happening in that tiny little dot on the tip of your finger or on your page. All of it. So crazy, right? So again, but here's the deal. You start as one fertilized cell into, by the time you're born, 10 trillion cells. Trillion. Not million, not billion, trillion. And every single cell in your body has that blueprint. Even if it's an eye cell or a liver cell or a toenail cell, they all have this blueprint in there. But the majesty of it is that out of this whole blueprint, the toenail says, well, this is my job right here. The eyeball cell says, this is my job over here. Right? The liver cell says, this is my job. They don't all read all of the blueprint. They just do their job. But sometimes the blueprint does get misread. And then there are mutations, which can be good and can be bad. So we'll talk more about that. I'm sure you guys have already heard about this term. The placenta is the sac in which the baby is like born in. They're like, that's their little, we call it the ecology of that baby. The placenta is the sac. Now, stem cells, if you've heard this term before, this is where you get to learn a little bit about that. Again, this is not biology, chemistry, or biochem, but stem cells are kind of like a neutral cell before it reads its own instructions. So every cell is kind of like a blank slate before it says, "Oh, okay, well, here are my instructions. I'm going to be a hair cell. I'm going to be an ear cell," right? So it's really kind of interesting. That's why people talk about stem cell research, because the theory is that stem cells can become any other cells. So I had a friend who worked on campus until she retired last year, and she was having problems with her hip or her knee or whatever. And so they would take out her blood and spin it and pull out the stem cells, which meant now out of your blood, there's not a whole lot of stem cells, meaning stem cells, by the time they turn into blood, they've already gotten their instructions. But there's a way to like filter out blood and look at these new baby cells, these really brand new cells that haven't gotten their instructions yet. They spin those out, they isolate those cells, they pull those cells out, and then they inject them into the knee or the hip. And those become cartilage or tendons, or they support the ligaments, right? Or bones. So they start to morph into what is needed based on what the body sends out those instructions, or activates. Okay, you read those instructions, and over there you read that part of the blueprint. You team up over there and reduce the inflammation. It's wild. So just as a side note, ladies, if you see like face creams and whatnot that say like stem cell research, it doesn't work from the outside. It just doesn't. It doesn't. It has to be inside your body to get those instructions for it to like basically team up, to do its job. And so sometimes, how like marketing can kind of be a little confusing or misleading. Just don't fall for it. And there's a lot of research that talks about plant stem cells. Same thing. You can't take something from the inside of something else and put it on your outside and expect it to do the same thing. It's not going to work. So just be aware, right? Now, CRISPR is an interesting thing. It is actually gene editing. Now, there's two sides of this debate. This is a very, very hot topic. This is like, I don't know if you guys have ever heard this one where like back in the 80s when they started like cloning sheep, and people were just like, oh my gosh, that is just like whatever, an abomination or whatever people are so upset about, right? So CRISPR is genetic editing, and that's an acronym for something. And it's in the United States, we do some of it. Other parts of the world, they do a lot of it. We do have a 2-week limit on how far we will genetically manipulate something. Meaning like so I donated my embryos to science, and if they wanted to genetically manipulate them, to me, science is science. They obviously weren't going to grow new people ethically, but they have a 2-week limit to what they can do, what kind of research they can do, or maybe, watch this stem growth, or watch this cellular growth, or add in more lysine, or take away lysine, or whatever amino acid, or whatever they want to do. We only really have 2 weeks to do that here in our country. In other countries, they don't have the limitations. So there's probably some weird genetic stuff going on somewhere, lots of places. So it said develop to edit genes. It said right there, it says forbidden for humans. That's a little old, actually, because remember, these slides are from 2018. And so, yeah, it's forbidden to create humans with it, but not forbidden to be curious down the scientific rabbit hole for like 2 weeks. Yeah, and I have a video next week. We'll talk about it. And you're welcome to poke ahead. I think I might open those up because they're super fun. So let's bring it to something more contemporary, something that we might remember. Who remembers Octomom? Right? So here's the funny thing. Yes, these are all her children, and even though these are her 8, but even before this, she had 6. So yes, she has 14 children. And she lives in our area, as in like Orange. She like lives in our area. Anyways, so the thing that was like driving me a little crazy is when I was going through IVF, literally going through IVF, and this lady, and I was like weeks behind her, and I was like I didn't want my whole situation to be like that public. And then literally when my doctor said we have 4 we have 4 fertilized eggs that we can implant with you. And I said, as long as 4 doesn't mean 8, I don't want to be an octomom. I don't want 8 kids. I don't even want 4 kids. Twins are going to be a handful. And he's like, it's so rare that you can actually get 8 or 4, and even twins are rare. And I was like, okay, well, fine. And it didn't work with me, but I was a little like, oh, this lady is a little bit, she was a little off, right? And I was like, oh, like, that is not me. I didn't want people to think that when you have IVF, it's because you're off. Think about it. Mariah Carey, Julia, I forget what's, the pretty women, J-Lo, all these people, IVF, big time. Yeah. Anytime a celebrity has twins, it's IVF, pretty much. So, Julia, it's killing me now.
Roberts?
Yes. So, yeah, Julia Roberts, twins. Yeah. So things like that. Anytime somebody has twins, it's usually IVF, or surrogacy, where they do IVF into the surrogate, which is great, which is fantastic, because why not? So the interesting thing here, you can see this genetic expression. These are all her children. I mean, she's obviously has olive skin and dark hair and brown eyes. And then she's got like a sandy blonde kid. And there's this one kid who has blonde hair and straight up blue eyes. If you look really, really closely, blonde hair, blue eyes. Now, here's another thing. If I was right behind her, my son is right around the same age as these kids. So they're a little bit older than him. So he's going to turn 14 next week. So they're about 15, all in the same grade. And that one with the blonde hair, blue eyes is still blonde hair and blue eyes. You can look it up. It's all kinds of stuff on the internet still. And yeah, so here's another thing to wrap your mind around. After she has, with these, including these 8 and the 6 prior, out of the 14, 4 are girls. Versus 10. Like, God. I can't even keep my kid fed properly. I don't know. Right? So in vitro fertilization is what IVF is. The acronyms will be on your test, so super easy. But again, you can, you literally remove the egg and put the sperm, you either put them in the same petri dish, or there's an actual technique where they actually inject the sperm into the egg and then it fertilizes. So that's what I had. I had this thing called ICSI, intracellular spermal injection. And I have the videos in there next week. It actually shows this tiny, I mean, if I said that was the egg, that little dot on the end of your finger, how small is the needle going into it to inject a sperm? It's mind-blowing. Legal restrictions exist in some countries. Some countries don't do IVF, but even if you put in like a Google search on like IVF in Orange County, it's unbelievable the amount of it's called reproductive arts or things like that. It's really interesting. It's a huge industry. And then you run a higher chance of having twins. So some of us are familiar with twins. Some of us have twins in the family. Some of us have twins or friends and whatnot. But there's monozygotic and dizygotic. So basically, you can have one egg that splits into 2 humans, or you can have 2 eggs and the humans, they develop side by side. So when you have monozygotic, that is those identical twins, right? And when you have 2 eggs, it's fraternal twins. So this is where the 2 eggs is where you're going to get a boy and a girl. And the identicals is when you're going to get 2 boys or 2 girls, right? And so it's really kind of interesting about how twins show up. And there are family genetics to that, which is really kind of interesting. So read a little bit more about that, but it's kind of fun to think about that, twins. And it's so here's a little side story. A student shared with me in a class that he was like a soccer coach like in Irvine. And there was, again, when you're doing these reproductive arts, there can be, again, multiple embryos, zygotes, whatever. So he said he worked with a family and the mom was pregnant with triplets. And she was like, I can't do triplets. So they removed one of the fertilized eggs and froze it, which is totally doable because that's how things work. And then she raised the twins. And when the twins were like 4, she implanted the frozen one and then had the 3rd one. So she had a set of triplets, but one was 4 years younger. Like it's just another thing to wrap your mind around is when you have a set of twins. Let's say there's like one house, like you have, so let's say you have a set of twins and each of the women marry two twins of men, right? So genetically the women are if they're identical, they have the same genetics. If the men are identical and they have the same genetics, and then they both have children. So there's like a man and a woman, I don't know, over here. They both have children. Those children are genetically the same. They're genetically siblings, even though they're cousins. So if the Olsen twins married other twins and had children, their children would be siblings, but cousins. Yeah, it's kind of wild, but this stuff happens. Stuff happens. It is crazy. Yeah. So again, there's a lot of different things that go on with our genetics. And I just find it super, super fast. It's fascinating. Two major terms that you are definitely going to need to know the difference: genotype to phenotype. Remember the word genotype as genes. I wish they would put it here and define it, and they don't. Genotype is like your genes, your blueprint, what comes in your cells. Phenotype is how you photograph observable characteristics, right? So think of that. So for example, my genotype. So my sister and brother look more like the Hungarian side of our family. So dark hair, dark eyes, dark skin, aquiline nose. And me and my little sister look like the German side of our family. So like buxom, blonde, the whole business, right? So, but my genotype carries the Hungarian side, right? So my kids would probably have brown hair or brown eyes at the very least, one of those. And we'll talk about dominant versus recessive traits. But so I carry the genetic type, the genotype of that Hungarian side, but my phenotype expresses the German side. Make sense? So my genes say one thing, but the way that genes turn on and off or express or show up on the outside is the photograph, the phenotype. Wow, right? So there are certain traits that are multifactorial, meaning it's not just an on and off switch in your genes. Sometimes it's a dimmer switch that turns on a gene expression or turns it off. Like, for example, height. Have you seen where gymnasts are super short? When they work out so much in doing gymnastics, that gene expression for height suppresses a little bit, right? Opposite is swimmers. When they swim and swim and swim and they're doing lengthening of their body, that genotype, that gene expression for height maybe get extra because of different things like human growth hormone and things like that. And there's a lot of different things that depend on a lot of different factors. Also, intelligence is a more multifactorial trait. It's not just, oh, you have the smart gene or you didn't get the smart gene. It's these different things that show up in different ways. So if your family really supported education and read to you and you were book of the month club and all that business, you might have your IQ up a little bit, right? Opposite, if you were neglected and you weren't supported and you were abused, your IQ can drop up to 30 points. Yeah, which is a lot, right? That can go from an average student to somebody who has an intellectual disability, who needs like lifelong supports, can't drive, can't live on their own. Yeah. So these multifactorial expressions have to do sometimes with your genes, but sometimes with your environment too. So keep that in mind. Same things. Here's that additive heredity or dominant recessive heredity. So a thing here. So again, if you have two parents with brown eyes and one child comes out with blue eyes, just like Nadia Suleiman, it's not that she did anything wrong. Actually, I wish they would show the grandparents' genetics, because I think one of her parents or grandparents was Lithuanian, which is very blonde and very blue eyes. And so if you just play the odds, it'll skip a generation and come out, right? And we'll talk, and I'll show Mendel's P's in here. I think I did show Mendel's P's in the last video, but again, you can have these two parents with brown eyes, but that's their phenotype. That's what their photography looks like. That's what their photo looks like. But their genotype behind the scenes has the blue eyes, because it's not dominant. The brown eyes is dominant. If you think about it, our planet was brown eyes first, blue eyes, green eyes, any other color eyes is a mutation. Yeah, think about it. Ah, so interesting, right? So these mutations, they hide and then they express maybe the generation after. All right, so if two brown-eyed parents both carry the blue-eyed gene, they have 1 chance in 4 of having a blue-eyed child. What? In my house, we have brown eyes, and I have green eyes, and my little sister has blue eyes. So wild. So wild. My one grandmother has green eyes. My dad has blue eyes. My mom has brown eyes. So we have a little bit of a mix. Yeah, interesting. Yeah. So again, other recessive genes includes genes for red hair. My hair's not exactly naturally red. It's more blonde. Rh negative blood. So if you are an A negative, O negative, right, or AB negative, that's a recessive gene, which is interesting. In my house, because again, I have an adoptive child, he is an A positive, my husband's A negative, and I'm O positive. It's 3 different people in one house with different blood types. That was like one of the first things we did when COVID hit. We were just like, hey, what, I sent away for an Rh test. You just prick your finger and put it on the card, and it shows you right there what your blood type was. It was like maybe $20 for 3 of them. I got it on Amazon because we didn't know. I knew my blood type. My husband didn't know his blood type, and we didn't know my son's blood type. So it was just kind of neat and then we did more research on it. It was kind of fun. Nature versus nurture. Again, some genes are there again in your genetic blueprint, in your genome. That's your full scope. In our classroom, I have a poster of a genome. Your full scope, your blueprint, your list of all your genes, they all have names and numbers and whatnot, like stars in the sky. Your genome can have things like alcoholism. They have like aligned that up to a gene. However, if your environment really loves alcohol, then yeah, you might develop alcoholism. But if your environment doesn't really support alcohol, then it might not be a factor for you, right? So says genes here create an additive pull. It's there, but if your environment is pro-alcohol, yeah, it's going to show up. If your environment's not pro-alcohol, it's not going to show up. So things like that, and nearsightedness too. Meaning, like, so for me, these are just computer glasses. So I can see fine up close, no problem. This just keeps my eyes from getting tired. But heritability is another word here. It's like saying inherited, right? 75% possibility of heritability, which is 75% able to be inherited with particular population, context, and era. So again, in my house, my dad could see far, my mom could see close. And so I inherited her eyes, right? So it was and I was always wondering why my dad sat down to eat and would take off his glasses. And now that I do the exact same thing. So for these aren't really glasses. They're just lenses. And trust me, after last semester, I needed these. So yeah, nature and nurture is a huge issue here. Like, what are you born with versus what your environment supports. Like, for example, my son, his nature, his genetics, his biology looks completely different from me. His body style is different. His hair is different. His skin tone's different. His skin behavior is different. Obviously, he's a boy. He has that genetic difference versus me. But it's interesting. We have supported him in such a way that, like, for example, so I'm fair and I have freckles. Skin cancer is going to be run higher for me, right? But he's a little more olive skin, but I put sunscreen on him like I would put it on me because that's how I put on sunscreen, right? So culturally, I'm like raising him to be a white kid, right? So a couple of times where I forget to put on sunscreen and he tans up really dark, like, oh yeah, like it's this thing where like he will probably not run a high risk of skin cancer. Number one, genetically, because his skin is darker. He produces melanin and absorbs sun and in the UVA, UVB differently. But I've like nurtured him to protect his skin. You see that? So it's a kind of a wild thing. I'm like, yeah, I know you're mixed blue, but like you like I put sunscreen on you like you was a white boy. So I don't. This is how his world is, right? So it's really interesting. So again, your genes plus your environment can have, right? And in the last video, we did talk about epigenetics, and they did in that video, he did talk about like your genes and your environment can, again, with twins, they can actually start to looking and acting just a little bit differently. Conversely, you can have twins separated at birth who start to act and do the exact same thing. Look on YouTube. There's a ton of videos that are like, these two guys are separated at birth and they both married a woman named Debbie. They both became firemen. They both blah, blah. It's just, they both are on their bowling team. It's just wild how some things line up genetically and some things line up environmentally. It's really interesting. And then there are times where there's extra chromosomes or missing chromosomes. So if you've heard of somebody who has intellectual disability like Down syndrome, they have an extra chromosome. That's why it's called trisomy. But there are in the animal kingdom, there are 18 different variations of our chromosomes, whether it's XY, XXY, XYY, missing an X, missing a Y, having 4, having 3, you know, again, there's a lot of different variations. And so when people talk about gender expression, it just drives me crazy because nature is not always obvious, right? Like an XX is a girl and an XY is a boy, but what if you have an XXY? What if you have an XYY? Right? What if you have an XO? What if you have an OY? Now, sometimes when these genetic disorders are a big deal, something like some children are born with indiscernible sexual organs, or they have both, but they're like smaller, right? So it could be an issue. Or sometimes somebody grows up a certain way, but genetically they have this thing that shows up at puberty where they're not developing like a normal, typically or expected development at that time. And then they have to go get shots and things like that to create that hormonal response. But again, you can have these genetic things happening in your body that you're not aware of until it causes a problem, basically, right? It's not a problem until it causes a problem. And so, you know, sometimes people have genetic issues and you would never know, and they just live their life, and maybe they can't have children, but they just live a typical life, versus somebody who has maybe a genetic disorder and it's very obvious, like again, Down syndrome. You can see that there's a phenotype there. There's a look, no matter the race or age or culture. There's a piece where they kind of look the same. My aunt had Down syndrome, so shorter in stature, like a little hand with a nice hard crease in the middle. It's called a simian crease. They're like a thicker skin. They have wide set eyes. They might have different issues with their organs, and they don't live very long. So, I mean, my auntie lived into her 60s, but it's a really interesting piece that where some genetics are totally obvious from the outside, like something like vitiligo, right? When we've seen like, well, Michael Jackson had a vitiligo, or we see these models now who have vitiligo. That is a genetic mutation. Or sometimes somebody has it, but it's a genetic mutation on the inside, right? So again, genes can show you the phenotype, like the photograph, or they're just on the inside as a gene, like a genotype, that are just part of your blueprint. And sometimes it's a big deal, and sometimes it's not, right? So, for example, I think I may have talked in the last video. If we go back to this one, there's a sex-linked traits that comes with certain genetic disorders. I carry the recessive gene for cystic fibrosis. And so it's similar to this. If both myself carry the recessive gene for cystic fibrosis and my husband did, or my partner did, then we would have a chance of 1 child in 4 who would have cystic fibrosis. Now, it's kind of a rare genetic disease, but it usually shows up in the white community, and it has to do with your lungs basically filling up and breaking down before the age of 30. Like, they really don't last past the age of 30. And so another reason why adoption is fantastic. We did find out recently that Peyton might have like a genetic thing, because his mom died early and his brother had a stroke at 31. So there may be a genetic thing where he's got something with that. We got to keep our eye on that. So, you know, you don't know these things. I mean, I went 10 years of having this kid without knowing he possibly had a genetic disorder. So in fact, I got to follow up on that and see where he's at with that. So there's different things. And how would you know what cystic fibrosis looks like on me? Because I carry it, but I'm not affected by it. Right? Things like hemophilia. That's where people when they bruise, their blood doesn't clot. That is carried specifically through the mom. My husband's cousin has that. Both her and her sister have that. and she does have a boy. It only shows up in the boy. So there's a few different things that show up that follow a female line. How about male pattern baldness? So early baldness comes from your mom's dad. Yeah. So like say I genetically or biologically created a boy. If my mom's dad was bald, which he was super bald, my son would probably lose his hair early. Yeah. So think about that in your family. So there's certain traits that are linked that the mom carries it forward, right? Or both parents have to have it for it to show up in one or more of the children, the offspring. Right. So why study conditions caused by extra chromosome? Why do we even talk about extra chromosomes and things like that? Because again, we learn about, there's a typical response from nature, but nature has mutations everywhere, every day times 1,000. Everywhere, every day times 1,000. Let's put this in perspective. I mentioned earlier that like the first human beings had dark hair, dark eyes, dark skin, right? And that's fine. That's beautiful. I love that. Most of the world has dark skin, dark hair. I love it. Love it. So anytime there was something different, but again, things happen in nature, right? Things like if you've ever picked a flower and it was like not formed all the way, like, or it's missing something, like it just had a mutation, right? Guess what? Black bears mutated into polar bears. It was just as the cells were splitting and the blueprint was being shared with all these different cells, something just hiccuped. And now, but at the same time, that hiccup sometimes occurs from the outside environment. So black bears, as they started moving north, their black fur wasn't being helpful when they were like on ice. So the genetic mutation, yes, is a blip, but it also helped that particular species branch off and survive. And if you're not aware, polar bears, even though they have white fur, they have black skin. They are black bears. They're mutated black bears. What? Blonde hair is a mutation. Dimples are a mutation. The fact that we have 30 different hummingbird species is a mutation. Giraffes didn't always have long necks. What? So that's why, like, if we even talk about theorists from last semester, we talk about Darwin, and I said it's not the strongest of the species that will survive, but the one is most adaptive to change. Hi, COVID. Hello. Same thing. So these mutations show up, but sometimes the environment's kind of supporting that mutation, supporting that change so that species can progress. Yeah. Right? Because if the mutation didn't occur, then the polar bears wouldn't be able to survive as well. It's so mind-blowing to me. Again, I really love this stuff. But again, difference is not always deficit. Just because something is different doesn't mean that it's less than. Trust me, I do believe that autism is a little bit of an evolutionary imperative. We need kids who have less social skills and more computer skills. And guess what? Like COVID is a perfect example of less social skills, more computer skills. Right? So the environment's kind of supporting the mutation. And the mutation exists so the environment can progress. It's wow. I mean, it's really, really wow. Love this stuff. That's why I love what I do. And again, spontaneous mutation. Sometimes just things happen, right? And they would typically say that Down syndrome happens in older mothers. And yes, you can say your eggs are getting old, but they're finding out that that's not exactly true. And even young mothers can have a child with Down syndrome. It is just a genetic mutation. Now, again, going back a few slides, genetic mutations also could make the baby not progress, right? That's where you heard somebody like, oh, I was like 9 weeks pregnant and it stopped growing. Same thing. There could have been a mutation that was so big or so catastrophic, even in this little tiny cell, that it just stopped. It just was like game over, right? So, and then it happens, right? So sometimes there's spontaneous mutations. Sometimes there's, right, again, maybe helpful mutation, like turning our black bears into polar bears, harmful, right? Or like, again, all life stops, or somebody is born with like 3 fingers instead of 2, or instead of 5, excuse me. Or harmless, things that you would never ever know, right? Again, cystic fibrosis is harmless to me, but it would be harmful to my 1 in 4 of my children. So crazy, so crazy. I wish people would get their genetic scope before they would have children. I wish we did that. You can do it. It just costs money, right? So again, check this out. Not exactly 46. Again, we have 23 pairs of chromosomes, 46 total. But 99% of surviving fetuses have 46. They're just typically developed, normal. I don't like using that word, but like just what you would expect, like this little baby that's like got all the pieces and parts and 10 fingers and 10 toes and whatnot. For the remaining 1%, only one newborn in 160 survives with 45, which is one less chromosome, 47, which is one extra, which is trisomy, or rarely 48 or 49. Yeah. So people could have 2 extra or 3 extra chromosomes. Yeah. So again, when people get so wound up about gender, I'm like, look what nature's doing already. Yeah. Survival is more common if some cells have 47 chromosomes and other have 46. So mosaicism is very rare too. You guys can look that up. I don't test on that or anything. I don't put that on a quiz or a test, but mosaicism is very rare, but it's possible where you can have very rarely where you do a DNA test and it says like you don't match either one of your parents. How is that possible? I could see where it's like, oh, you don't match your dad, right? Because things happen or whatever. But if you don't match either one of your parents, it just means that your mom or your dad perhaps had mosaicism and then maybe or passed it on to you. Just means that you in your body you have 2 different blueprints. Yeah, rare, but it happens. So when we get so bent about this person being a girl and this person being a boy, there's so many variations just in nature. I mean, think about it. Or we would only have one type of butterfly, one type of bird, one type of dog, one type of cat. Yeah, so things happen and it's okay. It's just that we like to have a predictable and predictable and familiar representation. So again, here is a child that with Down syndrome. And again, this is it's interesting because he has that look. Let me find my annotation here. He has that look like my auntie would have that look, that wide set eyes, that the bridge of the nose, shorter. You can see his hand is like not as developed as this child's hand. But they share the classrooms, and I really, really love this one. Yeah. It involves around 300 distinct characteristics from third chromosome. They are unique individuals. And they do have some things like their large organs. Our large organs kind of fail a little bit earlier. They're shorter in stature. There's a lot of speech issues. There's a lot of hearing and eye and vision issues, things like that. But I tell you what, like my auntie had her gifts. Like if she met you once, she would memorize your birthday, and then like years later, and she'd be like, oh, like, do you remember your friend Viviana? Like, oh, that's just her birthday. Yeah, no, I totally forgot. Yeah. So she was things like that. So they all have their gifts, and you know what? Most of them are very, very happy. And if there's a mild form of it, they can live independently. They can have jobs. It's something that us as a society needs to learn more than they need to learn. Yeah, it's very sweet. Come take 205 with me and we'll talk about how we're more alike than different. Again, very, very sweet. And so, yeah, again, we'll hear the word Down syndrome, but it's technically put down trisomy 21. That's the technical term. And then we don't use the term mentally retarded anymore. We say intellectual disability. And we don't say the Down syndrome kid. We say the child with Down syndrome or the child with intellectual disability because they're a child first or a person first. Yeah. And then again, there's dominant disorders. You ever met with somebody with 2 different eye colors? That's a genetic mutation, right? Sometimes you can see it in this, like they said, in the phenotype in that photograph. Sometimes you can see it like a dimple, right? Or 2 different color eyes. Or I have like a one color doing this in the middle of my eye. It's called centric heterochromia. So I have one color, like a ring around this color, and then the rest is a different color. And again, some of these disorders, they get carried forth into the next piece, but sometimes they don't. Exceptions are the Huntington disease, a fatal central nervous system disorder caused by genetic miscode, meaning as your blueprint was replicating, it just copied itself wrong, right? And more than 35 repetitions in a particular triplet, meaning as it tried to replicate itself, if it messed up this many times, Huntington disease is actually a fatal central nervous system disorder. And then, or early onset Alzheimer's. Rare, but it happens. And again, that could also be in the environment supporting that as well. So more genetic problems here, like things like recessive disorders that I've talked about. Sickle cell anemia is another blood disorder where instead of your blood looking like a round, like kind of like donuts, they actually look like a crescent moon. And so what they do is they clog up, they're sharp and they cut up, and it's really hard. But that shows up a lot in the African American community. Cystic fibrosis is there, talk about there, Northern European. Fragile X is a kind of a newer one where if you look at the X, the little X of the chromosome at certain parts of the chromosome is actually like broken. Oh, and it shows up as intellectual disability. Kind of looks like autism on the outside, but it's something that is genetic. Like autism does not have a genetic marker. Does not. It's a brain issue, right? But Fragile X has a genetic marker. And so it looks like autism, but if you haven't done the genetic testing, you wouldn't know if it's Fragile X. Fragile X children cannot reproduce. Most common form of inherited mental retardation, we don't use that term anymore, because trisomy or Down syndrome is a mutation. It's just a blip. This one is inherited. Even though a lot of kids can't have children. It's wild. Yeah. So there's a lot of things going on genetically in our bodies that are, again, what did I say earlier? How do we actually create children successful? It's amazing. So again, do your genetic testing if you can. I had mine done because I was part of the reproductive arts that we were doing. And I was actually pregnant when they called me and said, you carry the recessive gene for cystic fibrosis, so send your husband in because you're pregnant and maybe you have a 25% chance of a child not living till 30. I was like, thank you. Great. Again, my pregnancy didn't progress. So again, I tell people, a huge fan of adoption. And so if you guys ever have questions about adoption and all that business, come talk to me. I'm obviously biased about it, but I tell people if you're in love with being pregnant, that's one thing. But if you're more in love with being a parent, that could happen faster. Yeah. So again, here's our genetics. We did it. This is chapter 3, part 2. Really excited that I could share this stuff with you. I'm a huge fan of it. So if you guys ever have questions at any time, I'm here. Any questions before we log off? I'm going to pause the recording.